Hello, this is my submission for the Education 203 final. And the three topics that I chose to think about were contextualizing learning, complex cognitive processes like critical thinking, problem solving, and transfer, and then as well as strategies for creating a highly effective learning environment. So to begin, contextualizing learning can come in many different ways and occurs when the content in one course is applied to a different course or is just applied to the real world. So this is beneficial because it makes the stuff in class more relevant for students and more personal, and can show them how the things they're learning in school can actually be applied to like a future career or just their interests. Um, an experience I had with this was in my AP Stats class. We did like a study about how much of the Earth is made up of water, and so we used this random location generator to find 30 places, and we found the percentage of them that were water, and we compiled our data and used like the statistical methods we were learning in class to figure out the percentage, which was 71%, I think, and it was the actual percent of water in the Earth. And so it was really cool to actually see that be applied in the real world. And math kind of became more meaningful for me because I was like, oh wow, I can actually use these abstract methods and equations to actually calculate things in the real world. An observation, I actually observed my AP Stats teacher, and she was doing a lesson about, she was teaching geometry. She was doing a lesson about like compasses, drawing circles, and creating equilateral triangles. And she kind of prefaced that back in the day, people didn't have these tools, and so they actually used like rope and straight edges to draw circles. And then she also front loaded that their next lesson they'd be learning about other geometric shapes, and she was talking about how artists use like mosaic tiles to create art, which are all just geometric shapes. And so it's kind of cool that she was applying all these things to other areas that students might be interested in, right? If students are interested in history, they can learn about the history of circles, and if they're interested in art, they can see how circles can create art. In my future teaching, I hope to use contextualization as much as possible because I think it'll make me an effective educator if I make class more relevant and I help students connect to the content, right? Math is really hard to connect to because it feels so abstract. And so I hope I can do my due diligence by making it more accessible through contextualization. The next topic is the complex cognitive processes, which includes problem solving, critical thinking, and transfer. And so I've experienced these skills in my pretty much like full high school career through one skill in particular, self-regulation. So I've took a lot of time to understand how I learn, how I best learn, how I can learn most effectively, and that includes both in class and studying at home. And so this has helped me kind of think about how it is that I process information and I retain it, and how I can use it, when I take exams and stuff. The class I observed was actually another Math 2 class. They were doing a lesson on perpendicularity, and the teacher gave them a packet which was review of content from Math 1, which was last year. And so instead of just giving them, the review, like giving them the answers, she had them work through it and, use transfer and problem solving to think, what do I remember and how can I solve this? And then she was doing a lesson about like right triangles, and she wanted students to prove to her why what she drew was a right triangle. And most students were kind of just saying like, because it looks like a right triangle, or because it has like the little square in the corner, and they weren't hitting the point that it's because it was perpendicular lines, right? So when you have perpendicular lines, they form a right angle, and so that's why you get right triangles. But the students weren't getting there, so she kept asking them. She kept, trying to evoke this critical thinking in them. And I think that was really crucial because, again, in math, a lot of kids just take things as they're given, right? They just see an equation, they think, okay, I have to memorize that, and that's it. They don't think about it conceptually. And so as a future educator in math, I hope that, I can be effective because I give them an understanding of the concepts beneath the math, and it doesn't just feel like there's all these things they have to remember and they're overwhelmed, right? I can make it, again, more accessible in that way. I can break it down for them. I can give them the background knowledge and then build on that so that they know how to do it and then why they do it. Because oftentimes if you forget, an actual equation, you can figure it out if you just think about what am I looking at and what do I need to do. So that's a way that I think I can be effective. Last but not least are strategies for creating an effective learning environment. And this comes in many different ways, right? at the core of it, it's making sure that the physical, social, and emotional needs of every student are met. And I saw this a few times in honestly all of my classes, but most notably in a history class I observed. It was AP US History, and the teacher used a lot of different methods of teaching. Right, he used Google Slides. He used like traditional like notes. He spoke. He had images. He had videos. He had like group assignments, and so he kind of differentiated his instruction to meet every student's needs, which I thought was very awesome. And it made sure that all the needs of the students were met. Right, they had social time to collaborate with their peers, and he was making jokes, and they were all talking, and it seemed very lighthearted. Um, and I remember in my education, I had a history teacher as well who would start class asking about, our weekends or our days, and kind of setting the tone for the class. Not so much like we were just there to learn and read and study, but we were there to collaborate and, be in this environment um, that, wasn't structured around like he was the authoritarian teacher and we had to just like sit there and take notes. And so I think that was something that I really resonated with, and something that I want to apply in my future teaching is, aside from the academics, I want to make my classroom an environment that's positive socially and emotionally for students, where they feel safe, they can just come in and they feel like they can talk to me and talk to their peers and not, dread the day. I think a lot of students dread math class because it's like they go there and they just solve equations for an hour, and it's like they feel like they wasted their time. So I want to create an environment where they feel like they can actually benefit. And if they don't like math, I hope they can at least like, the atmosphere that I create for them. And so those are the three things that I focused on. And I hope this was valuable to listen to. And I thank you for listening.